Every time I walked into my father's mansion, I felt the weight of his expectations crushing my shoulders. The grand foyer, with its marble floors and crystal chandeliers, wasn't just a display of wealth, it was a constant reminder of everything he thought I'd never achieve. I can still hear his voice, rich with disappointment, echoing through those perfectly decorated halls. You'll never understand what it takes to live like this. Those holiday dinners were the worst. While others gathered around tables celebrating family bonds, I sat there, fork in hand, swallowing both my food and his endless lectures about success. You see this wine, he'd say, swirling his glass of aged Bordeaux. It costs more than you make in a week, and that's why you'll always need me. I would smile, letting the words slice through me like invisible knives, each cut deeper than the last dot. The hardest part wasn't the criticism. It was watching him genuinely believe that his success would be my ceiling, not my floor. In his mind, I was destined to be nothing more than an extension of his legacy, a dependent branch of his mighty oak. During those elaborate Sunday brunches, as he detailed his latest business conquest, I learned to mask my pain with polite nods and practiced smiles. But something interesting happens when you're constantly told what you can't do. It either breaks you or becomes the fuel that silently drives you forward. Behind my quiet exterior, each dismissive comment, each condescending glance, and each you'll never understand, became a brick in the foundation of my determination. I didn't argue or defend myself. I simply absorbed every word, transforming his doubt into my private motivation. You see, when someone constantly reminds you of your perceived limitations, you have two choices: accept their version of your story or quietly write your own. I chose the latter, but not with angry defiance or bitter resentment. Instead, I channeled those emotions into something more powerful, a silent resolve that would eventually speak louder than any words ever could. Looking back now, I realize that those painful moments around his dinner table weren't just tests of endurance, they were the first chapters of my own success story, written in invisible ink, waiting for the right moment to reveal themselves. Every night in that tiny studio apartment became my silent rebellion. I remember sitting on my worn-out futon, surrounded by business plans and sticky notes, while my father's words echoed in my head. But something changed inside me. Those cutting remarks at holiday dinners didn't just wound me anymore, they fueled me. Each doubt he planted became a seed of determination. I carefully nurtured. I started working 16-hour days, not because I had to, but because I chose to. My small space became my war room, where I'd strategize until dawn. I can still feel the burn in my eyes from staring at spreadsheets, the coffee stains on my documents, the way my hands would shake from exhaustion and excitement. But I never complained. This wasn't just about proving him wrong, it was about proving myself right. The irony wasn't lost on me when I had to skip his lavish parties to work on my business plan. While he showcased his success in grand ballrooms, I was building mine in silence, fueled by instant noodles and unshakable conviction. Every time he'd mention how I'd never understand real success, I'd think about the contracts I just signed or the deals I'd closed. I kept every small victory close to my heart, letting them accumulate like quiet ammunition. My neighbors probably thought I was crazy, hearing me practice pitches at 3 in the morning, or watching my lights stay on when everyone else was asleep. But that tiny studio became my cocoon of transformation. Every sacrifice, every missed social event, every moment of doubt when I questioned if he might be right, they all strengthened my resolve. What my father never understood was that his words didn't break me, they crystallized my purpose. In those solitary moments, surrounded by dreams bigger than my square footage, I wasn't just planning a business, I was architecting my revenge, served cold and calculated, floor by floor, deal by deal. Sometimes the greatest motivation comes from those who believe in you the least, and their doubt becomes the foundation of your most magnificent achievements. You see, success doesn't always need an audience during its construction. Sometimes the quietest builders create the tallest towers, and the deepest wounds carve the strongest characters. Every one of us has someone who said we couldn't. Let their words be the bricks you use to build your empire. My father's empire was a towering monument to his success, a constant reminder of what he thought I could never achieve. I watched him build his real estate portfolio piece by piece, each acquisition another jewel in his crown of achievement. His penthouse apartment, perched high above the city, became the physical manifestation of his pride, floor to ceiling windows that showcased his domain, marble countertops that cost more than my first year's salary, and artwork that screamed success from every carefully curated wall. I can still hear his voice at every family gathering, the way he'd casually mention his latest multi-million-dollar deal while looking at me with that mixture of pity and disappointment. This is what real success looks like, he'd say, gesturing around his luxurious space. Something you need to understand the value of hard work to achieve. Each word felt like a dagger, cutting deeper than the last. As I sat there in my off the rack suit, nodding politely while swallowing my determination with every sip of his expensive wine, his success became my shadow, a dark cloud that followed me everywhere. When potential investors would hear my last name, their eyes would light up, not because of who I was, but because of who my father was. "Oh, you're his son," they'd exclaim, and I could feel my own identity dissolving into his legacy. Every achievement of mine was measured against his yardstick, every step forward overshadowed by his towering presence in the industry. But something inside me refused to accept this as my story's end. Each dismissive comment, each condescending piece of advice, became fuel for my silent revolution. I started seeing his empire not as an insurmountable mountain, but as a challenge that would require me to dig deeper, work harder, and dream bigger than he ever imagined I could. You see, success isn't inherited. It's earned through countless sleepless nights, through the courage to stand alone, through the resilience to keep going when everyone expects you to fail. My father's empire might have been built on bricks and mortar, but mine would be built on something far more valuable, the unshakable belief in my own potential, despite every voice that said I couldn't make it. When you're standing in someone else's shadow, you have two choices: remain there, accepting the darkness as your destiny, or step out and create your own light. I chose to create something that would force him to look up, not just at his own success, but at what his son had become, despite his doubts. I remember the exact moment I decided to stop being just my father's son and become my own person. It wasn't during one of his lectures about success or after another holiday dinner filled with subtle jabs. It was on a quiet Tuesday morning, sitting in my cramped studio apartment, staring at my bank account with barely enough to cover next month's rent. That's when something inside me shifted. My father's empire loomed over me like a mountain I could never climb, but I realized I didn't need to climb his mountain. I could build my own with trembling hands but unwavering determination. I withdrew my last savings and invested in my first business plan. The irony wasn't lost on me, using the little money I had saved from the job my father considered beneath me to break free from his narrative that every night after my day job I would research market trends until my eyes burned. My tiny apartment became my war room, with sticky notes covering every wall and spreadsheets becoming my midnight companions. I learned to live on instant noodles and coffee, sacrificing comfort for capital. Each penny saved went straight into my business idea. a digital solution that would revolutionize how small businesses handle their operations. The hardest part wasn't the endless work hours or the constant uncertainty. It was maintaining my resolve when my father's voice echoed in my head, telling me I was foolish to think I could make it on my own. But every doubt he planted became fertilizer for my determination. I transformed his skepticism into fuel, burning the midnight oil while developing my business model. I won't pretend it wasn't lonely. Friends stopped calling when I couldn't join their weekend plans. Dating became a luxury I couldn't afford, not in time or money. But in those solitary moments, I found my strength. I discovered that being alone didn't mean being lonely. It meant being focused. What my father never understood was that his success story wasn't the only template. While he built his empire through traditional real estate, I was pioneering a digital revolution. Every small victory, my first client, my first positive review, my first month in profit, felt like laying foundation stones for my own tower, one that would eventually rise above his dot. Your legacy isn't determined by the shadow you stand in, but by the light you choose to create. Sometimes the greatest act of self-belief is walking away from the path others have paved for you and carving your own, even when everyone tells you it's impossible. Trust me, the view is worth it when you finally build high enough to see beyond their expectations. Starting a business wasn't just about proving my father wrong, it was about proving something to myself. I remember those first months in my tiny studio apartment, hunched over my laptop until 3 in the morning, fueled by instant coffee and sheer determination. My savings account dwindled as I poured everything into my dream, but I knew deep down this was my path to independence. Every small victory felt monumental. My first client wasn't just a paycheck, it was validation that I could create value on my own terms. I still remember my hands shaking as I signed that first contract, trying to mask my inexperience with confidence. I wasn't sure I had, but that client led to another, and another, until I had to start turning down projects. The challenges came in waves. There were months when I questioned everything, times when a major client suddenly pulled out, or when a crucial deal fell through at the last minute. I learned to negotiate contracts in my car between meetings, to pitch to investors while fighting off exhaustion, to rebuild strategies after devastating setbacks. Each obstacle felt like my father's words coming back to haunt me, but each solution proved them wrong. I built my company brick by brick, relationship by relationship. While my father boasted about his inherited empire at family gatherings, I was silently mastering every aspect of my business. I learned to read financial statements like novels, to spot market opportunities others missed, to build a team that shared my vision of excellence. The most powerful lesson wasn't about money or success, it was about resilience. When you're building something from nothing, you can't afford to let doubt win. Every setback became a setup for a comeback. I discovered strength I never knew I had, turning rejections into fuel for growth and uncertainty into opportunity. Looking back now, I realize that every sleepless night, every missed social event, every moment of doubt was building something greater than just a successful company. It was building character, determination, and an unshakable belief in my own capabilities. When you're willing to bet on yourself, to work harder than anyone expects, to keep pushing forward when others would quit, that's when you truly understand the value of hard work. Your dreams might seem impossible today, but remember every empire starts with a single step, and every success story begins with someone brave enough to try. Your journey might be different from mine, but the principles remain the same: persistence, resilience, and an unwavering belief in yourself. Don't let anyone's words define your potential. Your legacy is waiting to be built. There are moments when doubt feels like a physical weight pressing down on your chest. I remember one particularly dark evening after losing a major potential client that could have transformed my fledgling business. I sat alone in my tiny studio apartment, my father's words echoing in my mind like a haunting melody. You'll never understand what it takes to succeed in this world. That night, staring at my reflection in the window, I could see both my present self and the ghostly image of my father's towering office building in the distance. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. For years, his success had cast a long shadow, and his constant reminders of my perceived inadequacies had carved deep grooves in my self confidence. I remember calling my mentor, my voice trembling as I confessed my fears. Maybe he's right, I whispered. Maybe I'm not cut out for this. The silence on the other end of the line felt eternal before she responded with words that would change everything. Your father sees success as a finite resource, but you're not trying to take his piece of the pie, you're baking your own. That conversation sparked something in me. I realized I'd been measuring my worth against his definition of success, trying to climb a ladder he built instead of constructing my own. Every criticism, every dismissive glance at family gatherings, every backhanded compliment about my cute little business, they weren't predictions of my future. They were reflections of his limitations. That in that moment of clarity, I made a decision that would define my journey forward. I stopped trying to prove him wrong and started focusing on proving myself right. Each setback became fuel for my transformation. Each obstacle a building block for my empire. The weight of his words didn't disappear overnight, but they gradually transformed from anchors into ammunition. When you're carrying the burden of someone else's doubts, remember this: their words only have the power you give them. Your story isn't written by their expectations, it's written by your determination, your resilience, and your unwavering belief in your vision. Let every you can't become a personal challenge, every dismissal a reason to push harder, because sometimes the greatest motivation comes from those who never believed you could. I remember the exact moment when everything began to shift. While my father's words still echoed in my mind, I was secretly laying the foundation of something he couldn't yet see. In my tiny studio apartment with nothing but a laptop and an unwavering determination, I landed my first major client. That initial success wasn't just a paycheck. It was validation that my path, though different from his, was just as valid. Every small victory felt like a quiet rebellion against his predictions. I worked through endless nights, not because his voice was pushing me, but because I had discovered my own fire. My first company started in that cramped space, where I'd often work until sunrise, fueled by a vision that was entirely my own. When we closed our first six-figure deal, I didn't celebrate with champagne. I reinvested every penny, knowing that true success isn't about quick wins, but about building something lasting. That the growth was steady, then explosive. What started as a one-person operation evolved into a team of talented individuals who shared my vision. We weren't just building a business, we were creating something that challenged the very notion of success my father had tried to instill in me. Each milestone, our first office, our 100th client, our first million in revenue, felt like steps away from his shadow and into my own light. I learned that success isn't measured by how closely we follow someone else's blueprint, but by how authentically we forge our own path. The sweetest part wasn't proving him wrong. It was proving to myself that I was right all along. Every doubt he planted became fertile ground for my determination to grow. Looking back now, I realized that the journey from that tiny studio to where I am today wasn't just about financial success. It was about reclaiming my narrative, about transforming those painful holiday dinners into fuel for my ambitions. Each step up the corporate ladder wasn't just a professional achievement. It was a personal declaration of independence. Your story might echo mine in some ways. Maybe you felt the weight of someone else's expectations crushing your dreams. But remember this: Those very expectations can become the foundation upon which you build your empire. Your doubters don't define your destiny, you do. And sometimes the sweetest success is the one that grows in the shadow of someone else's skepticism. I remember the exact moment when everything changed. Standing in my office, overlooking the city skyline, I held the quarterly reports that showed our company had not just met its targets, we'd shattered them. My hands were trembling, not from fear this time, but from a surge of validation that coursed through my entire being. This wasn't just about numbers on a page. This was proof that every sleepless night, every rejected proposal, every doubtful glance had been worth it. You see, success doesn't announce itself with fanfare, it creeps up on you in quiet moments. Like when I realized I hadn't checked my bank account balance in weeks because I finally knew there was more than enough. Or when potential clients started calling me instead of the other way around. These moments felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unfold before my eyes, except it was mine, all mine. The sweetest part wasn't the money or the recognition. It was the profound understanding that I'd built something sustainable, something that would outlast any inheritance or handout. Each decision I made, each risk I took, was another brick in the foundation of my own legacy. Yet even as I celebrated these milestones, there was always this hollow space in my chest, a space where my father's approval should have been. I wanted him to see me, really see me, not as his disappointing child, but as the force I'd become. Sometimes I'd catch myself rehearsing conversations with him in my head, explaining my achievements, showing him the empire I'd built from scratch. But I knew those conversations would never happen. At least not the way I imagined them, that to anyone out there fighting for their own identity while carrying the weight of others' expectations. Your journey is valid. Your struggles, your small victories, your silent battles, they're all painting a masterpiece that only you can create. When people tell you what you can't do, let their doubts fuel your determination. Because success isn't just about proving others wrong, it's about proving yourself right. The view from the top isn't just about looking down. It's about looking back at your climb and knowing that every step, every stumble, every moment of uncertainty shaped you into who you are today. And trust me, there's no inheritance in the world that can match the pride of building something with your own hands. The day I signed the papers for the penthouse, my hands trembled not from the weight of the pen, but from the magnitude of what this moment represented. I wasn't just buying property above my father's home. I was physically manifesting everything I'd worked for, everything he said I couldn't achieve. Every dismissive comment, every doubtful glance, every holiday dinner where he'd reminded me of my perceived inadequacies. They all culminated in this single powerful act. I remember standing in that empty penthouse for the first time as its owner, my footsteps echoing against the marble floors. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a view that stretched beyond the city skyline, but my eyes were drawn downward, to the familiar terrace where my father often stood, completely unaware that his son now occupied the space above. The irony wasn't lost on me. For years he had metaphorically looked down on my dreams, and now I could literally look down on his reality. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about redemption, about proving to myself, more than anyone else, that I could forge my own path. The purchase wasn't just a financial transaction, it was a declaration of independence. Every square foot represented countless sleepless nights, rejected proposals, and moments of doubt that I pushed through. The key in my hand wasn't just to a home, it was to a future I built with my own hands, my own vision, my own determination. That standing there, watching the sunset paint the city in hues of gold, I felt something shift inside me. The weight of seeking approval lifted from my shoulders. I realized that while I'd spent years trying to prove my worth to him, I'd actually proven something far more valuable to myself, that I was capable of more than anyone, including me, had imagined. To those of you fighting for your own space in the world, Remember that sometimes the greatest victory isn't improving others wrong, but improving yourself right. Your journey might not involve buying the penthouse above someone who doubted you, but every step you take toward your dreams is a floor you're building in your own tower of success. The view from the top isn't about looking down on others, it's about finally being able to see how far you've come. The moment I stepped out onto my new penthouse balcony, looking down at my father's terrace, I felt my heart pounding against my chest. Years of dismissive comments and doubtful glances had led to this precise instant. I remember gripping the railing, my knuckles white, as I watched him walk out for his morning coffee, completely unaware of my presence above that. When he finally looked up, our eyes met across the vertical distance. The coffee cup froze midway to his lips, and for the first time in my life, I saw something I'd never witnessed in his expression before: genuine surprise mixed with a dawning realization. The armor of superiority he'd worn for so long cracked right before my eyes. My voice trembled slightly as I called down, "Good morning, Dad." Such simple words, yet they carried the weight of 1,000 unspoken victories. The silence that followed was deafening, filled with years of proving myself, countless sleepless nights, and every tear I'd shed in private. I watched as he slowly set his cup down, his movements deliberate, almost mechanical. His face cycled through emotions: confusion, disbelief, and finally something that looked remarkably like respect. The man who had always looked down on my dreams was now quite literally looking up at me, though the irony wasn't lost on either of us. Every holiday dinner where he'd lectured me about understanding real success, every backhanded compliment about my cute little business ventures, all of it crystallized in this moment. But standing there, I felt no desire to gloat. Instead, I was flooded with a profound sense of peace. I had done this for me, not for him. My journey from that tiny studio apartment to this penthouse wasn't about proving him wrong. It was about proving myself right. And as I stood there watching my father process this new reality, I realized that success isn't about the height of your building or the size of your empire. It's about the strength you find within yourself to keep climbing, even when others say you can't. To anyone out there fighting for recognition, remember this: your victory doesn't need to be loud to be powerful. Sometimes the most profound statements are made in silence. Standing tall in the space you've created for yourself. Build your legacy not from a place of revenge, but from a deep belief in your own potential. That's the kind of success that no one can ever look down on. Today, standing here in my penthouse, I find myself reflecting on a journey that's become far more meaningful than just proving my father wrong. Yes, I've achieved what he said was impossible, but this success has opened my eyes to something far more profound. Every morning, as I watch the sunrise paint the city skyline, I'm reminded that my true victory isn't in the height of my home, but in the depth of my transformation. I used to measure my worth against my father's yardstick, desperately trying to match his definition of success. But in building my own empire, I discovered a truth that's both liberating and humbling. Legacy isn't about surpassing someone else's shadow, it's about casting your own light. My journey taught me that real success isn't found in comparison, but in creation. The weight of his doubt used to crush me, but now I understand that those same pressures forged me into someone stronger than I ever imagined possible. Each challenge, each dismissive comment, each holiday dinner filled with subtle jabs, they all became fuel for a fire that burns brighter than any inherited flame ever could. What moves me most deeply now isn't the victory over his expectations, but the responsibility that comes with it. I've learned that true power lies not in proving others wrong, but in proving yourself right. Every day I ask myself, how can I use this platform to lift others who are where I once was? Because while buying this penthouse might have changed my father's perspective, it's what I do from this height that will define my legacy. I feel an overwhelming sense of purpose now. My story isn't just mine anymore. It's a beacon for everyone who's ever been told they're not enough. When I look down at the city below, I don't see my father's shadow anymore. I see countless lights, each representing someone with dreams as big as mine once were. And I realize that my journey isn't over, it's evolving into something greater than personal vindication. The future stretches before me like an unwritten story, and for the first time, I'm not writing it to prove anything to anyone but myself. This is my call to you. Don't let anyone else hold the pen to your story. Your legacy isn't about living above someone else's expectations. It's about building a foundation so strong that others can climb upon it to reach their own heights. Today, when I walk into rooms filled with young entrepreneurs and dreamers, I see reflections of my past self in their eyes, the same hunger, the same fire, the same desperate need to prove themselves. And every time I share my story, I watch their expressions shift from doubt to possibility. My journey has become more than just my personal victory. It's become a beacon of hope for others who've been told they're not enough. I remember meeting Sarah, a young woman whose father, like mine, had built an empire and used it as a measuring stick against her dreams. When she heard about how I silently constructed my success while living in that tiny studio apartment, tears welled up in her eyes. I thought I was the only one, she whispered. That moment crystallized something profound for me. Our struggles, though deeply personal, connect us in ways we never imagined. The most powerful conversations happen after my speaking engagements, when people pull me aside to share their own stories of being diminished, of fighting against the shadows of towering expectations. Each interaction reinforces what I've learned. Our greatest strength often emerges from the very places where others saw weakness. My story has evolved beyond the narrative of a daughter surpassing her father's expectations. It's become a testament to the power of resilient spirit and unwavering determination. When I mentor young entrepreneurs now, I don't just share business strategies. I share the emotional armor I built, the internal dialogues that kept me going, the small victories that accumulated into monumental triumph. What moves me most is watching others recognize their own potential through my experience. Every time someone reaches out to tell me they've started their business, bought their first property, or finally stood up to those who doubted them, I feel the ripple effect of my journey extending far beyond that penthouse purchase dot. This is what legacy truly means. It's not about the buildings we acquire or the wealth we amass. It's about the lives we touch, the courage we inspire, and the change we catalyze in others. Your story of resilience might be different from mine, but its power to transform lives is just as potent. Remember, while others may try to write your story for you, you hold the pen. Your legacy isn't just about rising above someone else's shadow. It's about casting light that helps others find their way. Today, as I stand here, I realize my journey was never just about proving my father wrong or surpassing his achievements. It was about crafting a legacy that would echo far beyond the walls of this penthouse, touching lives I may never even meet. My story has become a beacon of hope for others, but what truly moves me is watching how it ignites their own fire of determination. I remember the day a young entrepreneur approached me after a speaking engagement, tears in her eyes, sharing how her family had dismissed her dreams, just as my father had dismissed mine. In that moment, I saw my past self reflected in her uncertainty, but also glimpsed the fierce determination that would fuel her future success. It reminded me that our greatest achievements aren't measured in square footage or bank balances, but in the lives we touch and the paths we help pave for others. My legacy isn't built in steel and glass. It's constructed in the moments when someone finds the courage to defy their doubters, Just as I did every time I mentor a struggling startup founder or share my story with those facing similar obstacles, I'm building something far more valuable than my father's empire ever was. I'm creating a ripple effect of empowerment that transcends generations. Looking ahead, I see my purpose with crystal clarity. It's not enough to simply succeed. I must ensure that my journey serves as a blueprint for others to follow, improve upon, and make their own. I'm establishing scholarship programs for underprivileged entrepreneurs, creating mentorship platforms, and working to break down the very barriers that once stood in my way. The legacy I'm building isn't about towering over others, it's about lifting them up. Every person who's ever been told they're not enough, every dreamer who's been dismissed, every fighter who refuses to stay down, this is for you. Your potential isn't defined by anyone else's expectations. It's shaped by your resilience, fueled by your determination, and limited only by the boundaries you accept. Ask yourself, what mark will you leave on this world? How will your story inspire others to rise? The legacy you build isn't just about what you achieve, it's about who you help climb alongside you. Take your challenges, your setbacks, your moments of doubt, and transform them into stepping stones for others. Because true success isn't measured by how high you climb, but by how many people you bring with you on the journey. Today, as I look down from my penthouse window, I don't see my father's shadow anymore. What I see is the skyline of possibilities I created, brick by brick, dream by dream. Breaking free wasn't just about proving him wrong, it was about proving to myself that my worth wasn't tied to his expectations or his definition of success. I remember those nights when his words would echo in my mind, telling me I'd never make it on my own. Each doubt he planted became a seed of determination. Every time he said I couldn't, I whispered to myself, watch me. And now, standing here, I realized that the greatest victory isn't the penthouse or the company, it's the unshakable belief in myself that I built along the way. My journey taught me something profound. Your legacy isn't inherited, it's created. While my father focused on building towers of steel and glass, I was building something far more valuable, a testament to resilience, a blueprint for those who dare to dream beyond the shadows cast by others. Every obstacle I overcame wasn't just for me, it was for everyone who's ever been told they're not enough. You see, success isn't about living above someone else, it's about rising above who you were yesterday. The view from here isn't just mine to enjoy, it's a beacon of hope for everyone looking up, wondering if they can make it. And let me tell you this, you can. You absolutely can. To everyone watching this, hear me clearly. Your story isn't written by those who doubt you. It's written by every early morning you push through, every setback you overcome, every small victory you celebrate. Don't let anyone else hold the pen to your story. Take it, write it, live it. Your legacy won't be built overnight. Mine wasn't, but every day you choose to persist, every moment you choose to believe in yourself, you're laying the foundation for something extraordinary. Start now. Start where you are. Start with what you have. The shadow you break free from today becomes the light that guides others tomorrow. Remember, the greatest towers aren't built with inherited privilege. They're built with unwavering determination, relentless persistence, and the courage to believe in your own potential. This is your time, your moment, your legacy waiting to be built. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for approval. The only validation you need is the fire burning within you. Take that first step, then another and another. Your penthouse awaits not above someone else's, but in a tower of your own making. The view from there, it's worth every struggle, every doubt, every tear. Trust me, I know. Now go, build, soar. Your legacy is calling.